Hey, Ahmed, I don't know. We don't know each other well enough. Getting to know each other still. So I don't know who your comedic inspirations are, who your heroes are, if I can use that word, when it comes to comedy. But for a lot of people, that person is Dave Chappelle. And look at the headline. We'll get to that headline in a second. Punchlines or dares. His new special, The Closer, goes too far, says the writer here. Read this piece, very interesting piece. But Dave Chappelle has a new comedy special on Netflix. It's called The Closer, obviously. And I'm just fascinated by comedians in general. Just the writing that goes into it, their backstory that informs their comedy, how they continue to push the culture into places that the culture is not ready to go. That's the funny thing about comedians. Mm-hmm. Like more than any other profession, comics will say, okay, you don't think this is funny? I'm gonna make this funny. You don't laugh about this in public. I'm gonna make you laugh about it. And sometimes it works, and sometimes the public says, no, we're not doing it. Try it again, we're not doing it. So, going back, Ahmed, to the days of Lenny Bruce. So Lenny Bruce was controversial, but if you listen to Lenny Bruce now, you go, well, what's the big deal? Huh. But it was a big deal at the time. And George Carlin, Richard Pryor, Eddie Murphy. I was talking about this with Gary Carter, one of our producers today. Eddie Murphy, Raw. There's some things that Eddie Murphy said in Raw. I think that was like 87, 88. No way, no how. Now, I don't think you say that now, they probably shut you down, probably cancel.
Yeah.
So that brings us to Dave Chappelle, where he's doing some of that stuff. He's pushing the culture to a point where a lot of people, like this writer, are saying, no, even though you're a comedian, and we give comedians leeway that we don't give other people in other professions, we don't give comedians we give comedians the leeway that we don't give to politicians, we don't give to journalists, we don't give to lawyers, we don't give to teachers.
Or co-hosts of Brother from Another, stuff that we can't say.
A co-host. Even with all of the leeway we give you, this writer says no.
Yeah.
So it's really that space of too far, not far enough, and then there's a tension in between, which makes for good comedy and good conversations.
If you're Dave Chappelle, you have to go to where a writer's going to say this, right? If you never even get close to a writer, if a writer never says that about you, there's no way you're getting close enough to that third rail. Which you can make the argument that maybe there are more third rails now than there were 10 years ago. Maybe things now
definitely
are you can't say, and comedians have always, if you tell a comedian, if you tell Dave Chappelle, you just can't joke about this. You can't talk, but he's going to want to talk about it. He's going to want to joke about it. And the same thing with Richard Pryor and comedians back in the day, that they're going to want to push the boundaries. And I think it's interesting you said comedians can kind of push things forward. But I also think that comedians can push back too. And they have a really good way, and the best ones do this, of removing themselves from the situation, looking at the world as it currently stands and being like, are we serious? Are we really going to do this? Is this really the best path forward? And I think Dave Chappelle does that as well as anyone. And I think that's the value of comedians, because it can remove you from the situation, look at the world as it stands, laugh at the world, because it is hilarious most of the time, and say, are we sure? I'm a big guy on groupthink, Michael, and I think that we get caught up in groupthink, and if enough people say it, it makes sense. You're like, yeah, I think that too. And then you got to get a Dave Chappelle every once in a while to be like, you all are going down a path that we shouldn't go down. So I like it. I don't agree with all the stuff that Dave says. I don't think anyone does. Probably he doesn't even agree with everything that comes out of his mouth, but it's so important. And I think, honestly, it's more important now than ever to have voices like Dave Chappelle. I really feel like that, Michael.
Yeah, I think when you're in comedy at that level, I think you got to be mindful of this. You got to say something. Say something that is meaningful or provocative. Otherwise, you're wasting your time. No, I'm getting close now. I'm getting close to the stove. I understand that. That flame is right there. I'm getting real close. This is an NBC property. I remember last year, or was it earlier this year? Okay, the months are starting to blur together. Maybe it was earlier this year. Bill Burr was a guest host on Saturday Night Live. And he had a monologue that really was pushing some people. And he talked about race. He's a white man, talks about race. He was talking about white women in particular. He was talking about COVID. He was talking about essentially anti-vaxxers, anti-maskers. And he did that on Saturday, and still on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, people were still talking about the controversial monologue of Bill Burr. I would say, job well done. Why? Because there are a lot of times there are comedians on Saturday Night Live or guest hosts on Saturday Night Live, and they're not making an impact. If I'm not talking about you on Monday or Tuesday, then maybe you might have missed. You might have missed that platform, which is supposed to make me a little uncomfortable, make me laugh, make me sad, make me think, make me do something. And so I think a comedian has to move you somewhere. Now with Dave Chappelle, and I guess maybe this is the genius of Dave Chappelle. Maybe this says something about us as an audience. He can say things about race, about gender, sexuality, the LGBTQIA community that other people can't say. And what that mean? Now, what does that mean? Will we get to the point, or will anybody get to the point where they'll say, nope, he's done? I think that's ultimately when you figure out if you've gone too far, when the public says, no, there are no more comedy specials for you, no more laughs for you, we're done. Yeah. And I don't think we're at that point, but I haven't seen the closer yet. So let me see the closer, and I'll get back to you and let you know how I feel about it.
Yeah, what is the term? Cancel culture that everyone talks about all the time. Is there going to be a point where Dave Chappelle gets canceled? And I feel like for Dave, it's almost impossible to do that, because to do that, you have to almost reduce someone to this single statement or single thing, and it's really hard to do that for Dave Chappelle, right? We've known Dave Chappelle for a long time. We know what he stands for. It's nuanced. It's a lot of things, and so is one statement going to get him canceled where it could? Some guy that we don't know about, man or woman, that we just hear this one statement, it's like, yeah, that's all I know about this person. So I think the thing working for Dave Chappelle is that he said a lot of stuff throughout the years, and most of it makes a whole lot of sense for a lot of different people. Now, there are other people that are going to disagree with different parts of what he says, but you know the man that Dave Chappelle is, and I think a lot of people have bought into Dave Chappelle, and so he gets maybe a pass from a bigger segment of people than would another comedian that we just learned about maybe a year ago. And I think that's important, and I think that's why, honestly, Dave is doing this, because I feel he knows that he has that freedom that maybe other people don't have.
That's right.
That he can't be silenced if he goes there where other people don't have that opportunity. So I give him a lot of credit for that, because, he's made so much money. He doesn't need to worry about this. Why would he throw himself out there to say something that someone's going to hate him for the rest of his life? He doesn't need that, but he's doing it because he thinks it's important, and I give him a whole lot of credit for that.
Well, but I think you go into it. Look, you can't. And I don't want to compare it to broadcasting, and commentary, but there's a degree, there's a kernel of commonality here between broadcasting, particularly with commentary, and comedy. You can't go in expecting and wanting to be liked. All right, now there's a balance. You don't want to go in and say, I'm just going to be a troll. I want to be hated. I don't think that works, but you can't be so concerned about, hey, if I say anything, they may not like me. I guarantee you, they won't like you. Some people just won't like you no matter what you say. You try to appeal to every demographic, you try to appeal to every clique, and it's not going to be successful. You cannot be universally liked. I think you have to go in and just say, I'm going to say what I say, I'm going to say what I see, and we'll see what happens. Now, I hear that, maybe you got a little comedy in you.
Well, so
maybe
not
maybe
really
you got
that
something
much.
You want to share before we leave.
Depending on how funny it is, you can ask my wife on that. It's hit or miss. But I think it is harder to do comedy now, because it's almost like the real world is just as funny as the comedy. It's almost crazier than whatever you could make up. I know a lot of people said that about the previous presidential administration that we had in there. But it also rings true with a former Saturday Night Live skit, and I think we have it, Michael. This goes back into the Kevin Nealon, Victoria Jackson years, early 90s, late 80s. It was like my favorite cast, and we all say that because it was when we grew up, whenever you grew up for Saturday Night Live. But they had this one sketch, and I think we have the video. It was Kevin Nealon, Victoria Jackson together here. It was very romantic. There it is. You can't. I don't want to give it away. See, it's like these two people do everything together. You know, they eat together. They go out there, ride bikes. I mean, that looks fun.
Oh, look at that.
Look at that.
Oh,
like there, you know,
okay.
intimate.
Some
Okay,
intimate
we can show that. Are we late enough at night
I
here
got
on
some
Peacock?
candles.
Okay, now it's getting a little.
Oh, nice.
Okay, but hold on.
Little bubble bath, little
And then-
champagne.
And Michael,
What
they
what-
also,
No.
yeah, they share everything together. They
come
don't
on.
want to be apart for any moment.
All right. So,
Yeah, dual toilets.
give me some give me some context with the dual toilets. What's going on here?
So I'm saying that, you know, that was a sketch in the late 80s, early 90s. Funny, you know, because like that would never happen in real life. That's why it's funny, right? It's just like no one would ever
Right.
design their bathroom to have two toilets together. Right, Michael? You're about to say that you
Right.
did that, or no?
I wouldn't. No. I'm not. No.
Meghan Trainor has done that. We have the sound.
Got a new house and we did construction. Nobody knows this, but in our bathroom there was one toilet, and a lot of times in the middle of the night when we're with the baby, like we got to pee at the same time. So I was like, "Can we please have two toilets next to each other?" So we.
No, I'm telling you, it is insanity.
That's an exclusive.
You guys are
Wait a
next-
minute.
We got
I'm
two
sorry.
toilets sitting next to
Excuse
each
me.
other, and we've only pooped together twice.
You looked at a contractor, another adult in the face,
Yes.
and you said, "We need a bathroom with two toilets next to each other."
and he
And
laughed
that adult said, "Okay."
he laughed.
You know what? Hey. You know what? I'm gonna tell you right now. Deal breaker.
Hey, but
Bill
she
Baker.
said, hey,
Go.
Michael, they've only pooped together twice. So, you know.
My headphones came out on that one. My earpiece came out on me.
He's done.
I was out of my seat on
He's
that one.
done. He might
That was
retire from
awful.
the show.